Sahana vavatu, sahanao bhunaktu, sahaviryang karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Did you ever go on a holiday and it was dynamic, bubbly, alive, full of experiences, lots of sights, lots of color, lots of variety and tastes? And then you came home, and now there is almost ringing in the ears because of the silence, and there is calmness and a different scent of your house is permeating your nose. The sun is shining through the windows, the heat against your skin, and you relax and you just let that silence sink in. Relax from the holiday. Tomorrow you have to work. Tomorrow you show up at work, and again, go into the car or on the train, or someone takes you there, and on the road there are sounds, there is traffic, and you open the door of the office or walk into that arena where the work environment happens. You see new faces, different smells, different vibe, different personalities. And then again, you come home and you relax. So, what can we observe from this? This is what makes up life experience. So, when there's a holiday and it's loud and it's bubbly, and then you come home and then you reflect back on the holiday, and you almost say to yourself, you know, it's almost like I was in a different world. Like, wow, what a journey. You know, what a bunch of things that happened, so different than now. It's like a different world. And you say, I'm in a different world now. Tomorrow at work, I'm in a different world again. Do you ever feel like this? Like it's like a different world based on the environment, the surroundings? Do you ever feel like this? Like you actually say, it's almost like a different world. So the person that was at the holiday, we call this person a knower, a relative knower, a person, a role, who played a certain role, who had a series of time-bound experiences, okay? So they knew certain things, they were filled with certain sounds, with certain experiences, and for a certain duration of time. Suppose the holiday lasted 7 days. So the knower, the relative knower, the person who you think you are, was filled with a 7-day experience consisting of sounds and smells and people that you have never met, and waitresses and waiters. Then that experience goes away. That knower, that person goes away, only to be replaced by a new knower, a knower who says, or who experiences a completely different environment. The environment of your home, the environment of familiarity, of calmness, of safety, of predictability. And that knower is now filled with a different emotion, an emotion of, suppose, safety that perhaps was lacking at the holiday. Maybe there was safety at holiday, but it was a different kind of safety. So at home, you have it at home safety. So the knower is filled with a certain security and knowledge of safety for a specific amount of time until tomorrow you go to work. And that knower again, the home knower is now gone. The holiday knower is gone. Now there is a new knower, a new time-bound person who undergoes a new set of experiences, different environment, different smells, different vibe, different trees, different colors, different faces. And again, that knower, that relative knower, is filled with a whole new set of experiences. So you have three kinds of knowers there. You have the holiday knower, we have the home knower, or the holiday person, the home person, and the person at home, at the person at work. Totally different. That means the relative knower, who you think you are, is the one who takes on certain kind of composure, environment, emotion, security, lack of security, only to be let go by a completely different knower. That knower, in Sanskrit, we call it pramata, the ego. The person who 99.9% of the people think I am, or think you are. Do this experiment with me now. Okay, fill in the blanks. I live in, and then let that voice in your head fill in. So I live in, I like, please fill in the blanks. This is your personal stuff. I don't like so much, fill in the blank. I love, fill in the blank. Okay. So what has been filled in the blank? Very different information, very different preferences than I have filled in the blank, that someone else, your fellow student, has filled in the blank. So the first thing we can observe is that no one filled in the same blanks. They're different. And even if they're the same, within that sameness, there's a difference. You may like, both people may like pasta, but they like different sauces on their pasta, for instance. So why have you filled in those blanks? Because there's a certain identity with those pieces of information, which we call your name, like Caroline. We say, Caroline, who is Caroline? And then we say, well, I live in, Caroline answers, I live in, etc. I like, etc. I dislike, etc. And then Caroline or Ellie, they say, and therefore that is who I am. Where I live, what I like, what I dislike, what I'm repulsed by, what is really attractive to me. This is who I am. This is what we call the waking knower. The waking knower, the knower who takes themselves real during the waking state. Right now, in this waking state, there are waking knowers who are now listening to sounds, who have a certain identity. And they say, this is who I am. Now, that waking knower, where is all that information? I live in, filling the blanks. I like filling the blanks. I dislike filling the blanks. Where is all that information during dream? Now, the dream knower comes forward. The waking knower is displaced by the dream knower, who right now, you think you are, I am this person, I'm listening to this, I like this, and I don't like that. What is this? That entire knower, the person who you think you are, is pushed aside, replaced by the dream knower. And that dream knower, having pushed aside the waking knower, again takes a brand new identity. I am a dancer. Suppose you have no connection to dancing right now, but in the dream, I am a dancer. I live on the moon or Mars or whatever you dream yourself to be during a dream. So the dream knower is now an entirely different being, which has no connection to the waking knower. And both the waking knower, right now, who you think you are, after this class ends, before the class has begun, that's the waking knower, and the dream knower, they both believe that they are self-existent, independently existing beings. They believe their existence is independent and it's permanent. And yet every night they both displace each other. The waking knower displaces the dream knower, and the dream knower displaces the waking knower. Every single night, this person who you identify yourself so deeply is gone, replaced by some totally different person. Not only that, but both the waking knower and the dream knower depend further not only on the waking state and the dream state, but they depend upon your mind. When the mind is then resolved in deep sleep, both the waking knower and the dream knower are gone. That means during the waking state right now, the person who you think you are with an identity, with a name given to you by parents, that individual has no reality because they are every night displaced by some totally different individual and then further resolved into the mind. That means the entire construct of who you think you are is just a temporary manifestation of minds, likes and dislikes and information where I live, what I am attracted to, what I'm repulsed by, and this information makes up the person who you think you are, only to be totally displaced and resolved during deep sleep when the mind itself, the source from which both the waking knower and the dream knower arise from, and that very source called the mind resolves during deep sleep, and there is neither waker, who you identify yourself with right now, nor the dreamer. Therefore, what can we establish by this? We can see that the waking knower of itself further takes on many identities throughout the waking state. For instance, just take the waking knower alone. The waking knower by oneself has a role of the enjoyer, the one sitting on a hammock, chilling out at home in silent space for one day. The enjoyer. I am enjoying. How are you? I am just enjoying life. How are you? I'm really peaceful. I'm relaxed. I am just in a place of inertia. I'm just enjoying my being. I'm enjoying. I'm an enjoyer. The knower, the waking knower, has taken on another role called the enjoyer. And that waking knower then takes on the role of the shy introvert when it's invited to a party of unfamiliar faces, where it's surrounded by such, and it little bit feels this sense of unsafety or I'm withdrawing. And thus the knower takes the role of the shy introvert. And then 30 minutes later, while still trying to build some connections with these people at a party, your friends arrive. And what happens to the smile on the knower at the party? Well, that smile definitely increases. What happens now? That shy introvert knower who you were so identified with is now instantly sublated by the confident warrioress, the confident warrior, because my friends have shown up. And now you say, wow, I am this confident warrior. A minute ago, I was the shy introvert. Now I'm the confident warrior. Again, you then take on that new role, only to be displaced by coming home once again, now just an enjoyer. Therefore, what can we observe from this experience? every single role that happens in the waking state is displaced by a new role. That role that we speak of is called a relative knower. We can call the relative knower another name, a state of mind. That's all it is, a state of mind. Shy introvert state of mind, shy or confident warrior state of mind. Another name for it is pramata, jnata, drashta in Sanskrit, which means knower. What kind of a knower? Relative knower. The person who you believe yourself to be, who is displaced by the dream knower. Now, if that is the relative knower, in other words, the ego or the ahamkara, if that is who you are not, then who are you? And how do you then discern that relative knower who everyone mistakes themselves to be, who one day will die only to be reborn? How do you discern that from your absolute nature as the very presence because of which it is known that different knowers are coming and going? Do you hear the difference? The absolute knower versus the relative knower. The relative knower is constantly displaced by other knowers. The absolute knower, the alupta drik, alupta, the uninterrupted knower, is the presence because of which all these relative knowers are coming and going, or are known to be coming and going, including the waking knower is known to be coming and going. The dream knower is known to be coming and going, and a lack of dream knower, a lack of, or the absence of waking knower is also known to be coming and going. You call that I slept peacefully, in which place there was nothing there. There was no life, there was no problem, there was no concern, there was no person who I thought I was. And because of that, I was happy. I was without the relative knower. I was without the dream knower. Therefore, what's the difference between the relative knower and the absolute knower? The relative knower changes roles, comes and goes, displaced by other relative knowers. What is the absolute knower? The presence because of which the relative knowers are known to be coming and going. That is your real nature. Presence which never gets displaced by any experience happening to the relative knower who you believe yourself to be. And thereby, this is the first statement in verse 18, which said that a jnani, a wise, enlightened one, sees actionlessness in action, recognizes the presence of awareness or the absolute I who never comes and goes amidst all of the actions, all of the roles, all of the states of minds that the mind goes through. Big. You have a hand up.
Yes, Andre. I was just curious about the various personalities of the knowers, the known, the waking knower and the sleeping knower. Are they both governed by the same likes and dislikes?
The likes and dislikes that are learned in the waking state, they get carried over in the dream state, which is why if you look at your dreams carefully, you can relate certain behaviors, if you are lucid enough in your dreams, hopefully, that you have learned in the waking state. And so the waking state, you learn certain impressions get in the form of memories, get imbued in the mind, and those impressions which are imbued, they fully come out unfiltered in the dream, which is why you become a lot more naughtier or a lot more expressive in the dream, because there is no social construct telling you this is not the right thing to do, or this is how to act. Therefore, the answer is yes, likes and dislikes in both the dream knower and the waking knower, they are there's a correlation there, but in the dream, there is no filter. However, the point of this discussion was, even if that's even if that's technically true, you do not in the dream say, I live in Australia or wherever you live. Do you say that in the dream? Hey, I am a person who's good in basketball. I am a person who's good in Monopoly. I am good with cooking. I'm a good cook. I play the guitar. Do you say that and you have you experience that proudness in your dream? Suppose you are that in the waking. Do you experience that in the dream? That information is not even there. The whole, see, in other words, what is it that gives you an identity? It's just series of information, what I like and what I dislike. Do you get it? That's all that gives a sense of personality in the waking state. What I like and what I dislike. A whole conglomeration of them says, this is who I am. This is me. And that entire me, a construct of likes and dislikes, is displaced by an entirely new person, a personality in the dream state. So the point,
Thank you, Andre.
thank you. So the point is, you do not, your existence does not depend on the waking knower nor the dream knower. Because if it did, when the waking knower goes away, why would you want to go out of the existence? You would not want to dream. You'll be so afraid of disappearing in the dream. You'll be replaced by an entirely different being. Nobody wants that. You want to continue to exist. You want to continue your beingness. Just the fact that you gladly go and have a dream and sleep shows you you cannot be bound by either the waker or the dreamer, or the absence of the waker and the dreamer, as is evident in deep sleep. Because we all go to sleep how? Miserable? Do you go to say, oh, I'm gonna sleep now. Oh no, I'm about to be miserable. Does anyone do this? Uh-oh, sleep time, pain's coming. No, sleep time means ultimate freedom is coming. Ultimate letting go of false constructs, which are a burden to bear in the waking and the dream state. You do not go to sleep in order to dream. You go to sleep to get rid of the waker and the dreamer. So that must show you, you must thus be that one who is free of the waking knower and the dream knower. That is why everyone enjoys sleeping, because I am for the first time going to get in touch with my nature. And thereby this whole sleep system is given to you to reset. It's like the ultimate reset for all species, all living species. There are some exceptions, for example, dolphins sleep with their eyes open and so on. But just for a general discourse, it is an ultimate reset. It is a moment where you let go of all these dramas and all these things you gotta do and gotta attend and gotta work out. Doesn't it feel great just to be free from that? Absolutely. Thereby, you are that one who is the ultimate freedom. Ultimate freedom and you, they are synonymous words, because your very experience proves that every single night, that you look forward to relinquishing this false construct of the waker and the dreamer.
This isn't all conscious. I mean, we don't go to sleep like saying out loud or to ourselves, like, okay, now it's time for me to let go of this and this. And then I mean, I don't. And also is we don't have control over that.
That's
right?
a brilliant point. Here's why it's brilliant, because it's amazing. Number one, you do not set up 3 states. You do not set up the general structure that there will be a waking, then there will be a dreamer, then there will be a deep sleeper, only to be replaced or sublated by the dreamer or the waker again. Number one, you don't create that. Number two, every species goes through that. No one selects that. Everyone has to go through that. What does this show you? There must be an overarching intelligence, a structure that sets it all up. We just play it out. A body appears with a mind, and the mind goes through, as we said, collection of likes and dislikes, which then you, the all-pervading one, start to identify yourself with, and then you go through the pains and the burdens that the body or the waking knower and the dream knower is bearing. This is why you wake up when the dream gets too nightmarish, because it's so heavy, and you say, oh, I'm so relieved that was not me who was being eaten alive by crocodiles, being dumped in a cave full of insects who were hungry. And you go, oh, thank God. And then you find safety in the waking state. And you're like, oh, I love this cozy place here. I love being in my bed, so warm and cozy. And let me, just cover myself up. And then you say, I'm back to reality. And then Vedanta shows you, even this reality that you take to be real is just another dream. It's just more stable. That's why you take it to be more real than the dream at night. Both are just dreams. This is a stable dream. The dream at night is a more kind of a fluid dream because it's your own creation. That's why it's not so predictable. But here in this like dream world, it's more of a common, unified, rule-based, structure-based reality. We call it Vyavaharika, where it's a collectively share. We all look up and we call it the sun. In your dream, someone looks at your sun and they say it's a Mickey Mouse. Someone else says it's a tree. Someone else says, I don't know what it is. That's because your dream is a lot more fluid. But this dreamlike world, solid, predictable, and that gives you a false sense of security. And so Vedanta pulls you out. Not that there is anything to be pulled out of, because all there is here is Ishvara. There's nowhere to go, by the way. There's no over there to be pulled out. So don't imagine like someone's going to reach out from the clouds and then get you somewhere else, because there is nowhere else to go. Right here, right now is the truth. The truth is here in this moment. And so Vedanta shows you this world that you've been taking as absolutely real is no more or less temporary and dependent upon many conditions, such as the waking state, such as the dream state, such as the deep sleep state, as is any other experience. And thus, for the first time, you can just appreciate, let go, that there is something to change, that there is something to accomplish, that you are there to be saved from some evil force. There is nothing to be saved from. You are already saved. You just have to discover that. Therefore, moksha, the jnani, who sees actionlessness in action, has not attained that by gaining something new, but rather performing an inquiry in your waking state. That means I first have to reduce all of the biases, all of the unconscious drivers, all of those coloring inks of the world that says you're not good enough, I don't trust anyone, this is not for me, I want this. All of these drivers have to be reduced. Otherwise, the person's not going to sit down and take this seriously. They're going to be wondering, yeah, but how do I then resolve, this domestic issue? Look, I really wish you well. That is something that you have to deal with. But genuinely, is it possible to look at the world and inquire into its reality if you are genuinely just pulled towards resolving a recent domestic affair? It's next to impossible, I tell you. It's next to impossible. No matter how much great knowledge you've got, when there is a domestic affair with someone with a certain condition that's pulling you in a certain direction to think, to be kind of, frustrated or sometimes too free. We call this agnostic, agnostic. I'm too free. I just got an open mind. Like, for how long do you have an open mind? No, I have an open mind forever. So then how will you ever come to any conclusion? So this means even an open mind, even that can go out of whack if it's not properly balanced out. Therefore, the inquiry happens in the waking state, even though it is still like a dream. Careful, I'm not calling the waking state a dream, because I hear this a lot in spirituality. I'm saying it's like a dream. Why do I qualify it with the word like? To remind you that the word dream has an attribute of a fleeting nature to it. And that fleeting nature of a dream is no different than the fleeting nature of this waking state. In that sense, I call it like a dream. So it's to remind you, yes, it is like a dream, but in this like a dream, my inquiry needs to begin. And when it begins, what do I discover? I discover the truth that this very world that I'm performing an inquiry in further depends on its constituents, depends on a larger truth, which is consciousness. And that consciousness, you are right now. Because if there's only one reality, Brahman, then how can you be different from that reality? There was a brilliant statement made in the class once. If all that is here is one, who am I to say I am different from that? Hey, who am I to say I am different from, if all that is here is one without a second, how dare I make a claim that I am different from them? Who am I? What's so special about you to make and say you're different from that? And therefore, this is the journey of the inquiry. The inquiry needs to be performed with a decently composed mind. And thus, if you don't have a decently composed mind, I know Silma and Carrie, if you don't happen, then what happens? If you don't have a decently composed mind, then the unwise person tries to replicate my actionless nature at the level of the body and mind. And so they become lazy. They become non-participatory, non-contributors. I've seen this decently well in Byron Bay, where I used to live for 6 years, where you have these beginners, right? And they just sort of sit down in a van, it's usually a van, with a girlfriend and a guitar. And you just chill out and you play the music and and you smoke some weed too. And you're at the beach, right? So you've got all the perfectly well put together environments and you're in bliss, I tell you. Why? Because you're actionless. You don't need to do anything. You're already accomplished. There's nothing to accomplish. You think these guys are going to go well in real life when they hit 30s and 40s, when life really shows you, what it's really about? Not at all. Then you have to go back into the world and get your senses right. So there is no cheating here at all. See, if you remember your dreams, you would have a lot more relatability. But it's okay. If there's no dreaming, then at least we still had that waking knower of holiday knower and home knower and work knower. It's the same thing. We just want to demonstrate the knower, the relative knower changes, is displaced by another relative knower. That was the point of the discussion.
Okay, well, anyway, thank you.
The point was not to dream or to have discussion, let's now dream and get fascinated into that, even though it's a bonus, but we need to be straight while we're having this discussion.
Please elaborate on the role of unconscious in dreams. Like, what's the role of unconscious? Because sometimes dream is guided by what you're living, right? Or something which happened in the past that you recall. But what's the role of it?
So when I was I was living in South Africa for 9 years, and we had a house there. And when we left to Australia, every time for maybe 2 or 3 years, went to sleep, it was the same room with my brother, and I was having a fight with my dad, okay? And this was really bothering me because I couldn't figure out why am I always having a fight with my dad in that house. The house became so familiar because it's like, oh God, here's another, I saw this yesterday in my dream. Here's it again. The point was, what was the unconscious, buried deep impression that was coming out in the dream, unfiltered? That's what you call the unconscious. Something unresolved between me and my dad took place when I was little And that was never resolved. It was pushed aside. And whatever gets pushed aside becomes the unconscious. And when it becomes unconscious, it finds a place to come out, usually in your dreams. Therefore, the unconscious and sleep, what's the connection? Or dream gives you permission, gives permission, because the mind is so relaxed, because it's in theta or delta wave, it's very slow. It gives that permission, that doorway to the unconscious. And so the unconscious, you then wake up and you say, wait a minute, what's inside my unconscious? What's unresolved? Remember your dream. And then in the waking state, you can now go and work through it. You can have a little discussion, a reframing, and you Pratipaksha Bhavana, and do whatever is necessary to resolve that. In that sense, dreams become a way to resolve your unconscious drivers of life. And that's exactly what I did, and the problem got solved, and it was all wonderful. Happy ending.
I have a follow-up question. How about vasanas then? Role of vasanas and samskaras in dreams.
Okay, so vasana and samskara is an impression that drives your behavioral choices in the present life. So the choices that when you go to school and you're attracted to one topic and not another topic, that is going to then influence the kind of memories that are developed in the waking state. And those memories will then be carried over into the dream state. So therefore, what is it that dictates your dream? It is the waking. What dictates the waking? It is the vasanas or the samskaras. So there's a connection between there.
Thank you. Got my answer.
So Andre, do we get credit for working through karma within a dream?
Within the dream, you do not get credit. You only exhaust your karma. Otherwise, if you could get credit, everyone would say, I want to have the coolest dream tonight, and we would love it. So dream is a place of exhaustion. You cannot gain karma. So that means you cannot say, oh, I've assassinated someone, and so you gain papam. You cannot do that in a dream. It doesn't happen. You can only exhaust it. That's why people get nightmares and they wake up. And that's also part of exhausting that pain that's buried in the unconscious. The discussion was, what's the difference between the relative knower and the absolute knower? This has been now enumerated, which then brings up the question, if I fail to address this distinction and I take myself as the relative knower, what happens? Then I am stuck to this cycle of rebirth. And what is the logic of this rebirth? It goes like this. How does everyone get born? Do you know things when you're born other than give me cookie and give me food and let's breathe? You don't know anything. Therefore, you are born ignorant.
Are you really born ignorant, or do you come into this life knowing something from your past lives?
Yes, you come in knowing something from your past lives, but that does not equal that you still know how to eat or, basically, well, you don't know how to eat, but how to talk and calculate. But you do come in with general impressions, which still need to be activated by being exposed to some knowledge. If you don't activate them, you will still remain ignorant. But when I say you're born ignorant, you don't know who you are. You don't know anything, right? You have to be told what's the right etiquette, what is history, what's the capital of USA, etc. You have to be told so many things, not only of the relative world, but you have to be told who you are, which is what nobody addresses. Which is why what happens? Being born ignorant of my nature, in this case, the nature not of relative world, what happens? Who am I? So before ignorance, who am I? It is that which is whole and complete. Whole. The whole, being whole and complete, coming with ignorance due to this mind, wearing this mind, this body, that ignorance manifests as a desire. Desire for what? Do you have a desire to suffer or desire to get in touch with your wholeness? Therefore, desire to return to my wholeness in countless ways, which is why your way of returning back to who you are is very different than somebody else's way. But what is one commonality? We all want to return back to my nature. Therefore, being born ignorant, ignorance gives rise to desires, desires to fill myself up. What does that give rise to? Action. And are all your actions going to be wise? Never. Some of them be distorted, and therefore action will be either a wise action, we call it punyam, or dharmic action, and unwise action, or papam. Papam, or adharmic action. In other words, an action that is guided by principles that retain the harmony of yourself and the surroundings, and those actions which only retain the harmony or survival of you at the expense of somebody else's comfort. That is called papam or adharmic actions. Now, those actions will then bring you correlative results. Obviously, if I hug you, if I'm kind to you, then you will hug me back. You will be there for me tomorrow, hopefully. Therefore, why? Because the action that I put into the field is harmonious, and you being driven by the same program of harmony, you relate to what a harmonious action is. Therefore, you give me back harmony. So action would thus produce pleasant and unpleasant experiences in life. Pleasant and unpleasant. And an unpleasant and pleasant, because there are so many that you have already of your actions collected so many pleasant and unpleasant experiences, that always necessitates continuity. It doesn't matter if the body dies. The pleasant and unpleasant has to go back to the original doer that caused those pleasant and unpleasant actions. Therefore, punya papam, or pleasant and unpleasant, necessitates a new body. And this whole cycle is what we call samsara. Samsara, which is not only pleasant, it's also unpleasant, but nevertheless, it is a circle of life. You're just running around in circles, sometimes getting respite, and then you say it's totally worth it being here. And then life shows you at 60s or 50s and so on, how it's not so pretty. And then you say, I want to get out of here. And then someone comes and helps you, and you say, oh, it's so lovely. I'm going to get married at 106. You even get married at 106 years old. Amazing. Because your hope is still in someone saving you. Now, I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. I'm just saying that this is the world of samsara. You apply an action. Why? Because it's arising from desire. Why? Because I believe I'm not full, whole, and complete right now. Therefore, I lean on objects, on the world, on relationships to give me a sense of purpose, a sense of fullness. Because when someone's next to you, what happens? You don't think about your problems, do you? That's why relationships are so popular. Your problems are gone. Hey, they're there for you. They're their security. They're your security. So all my problems, all my sense of smallness gets sublated by the presence of another person. And then for 40, 50 years, I believe there's nothing to work. No, everything's fine. What are you talking about, this peace? What peace? I'm peaceful. Why are you guys having this discussion? You know, I'm happy. You're happy. Why? Because somebody else is suppressing all of those unconscious, buried things, right? Which will come out one day, one life or the other. So this is the process. Now, when you recognize your nature, what happens? You discover you have no connection to the being who is going through this process. That being is called the waking knower or the dream knower. In this case, the waking knower will stick there. You have no real connection to that being. And thus, whatever that being is going to go through, whatever pleasant and unpleasant experiences, you discover that is not me. That's not who I am. That is me, but I am not it. Because everything depends upon me, but I do not depend on anything else. as we said, the clay in the pot example. Thomas, you asked this question last week. How is it that everything is me, but I am not it?
Well, somebody put in the chat about not choosing to be born. And I believe that we choose to be born and that we choose our parents and our other things before we're actually born or incarnated or whatever.
Yeah,
What
you
does Vedanta?
got it. So you're already choosing right now by the actions that you are putting into the field, and that's the kind of parents you will get. So you don't, it's not like a one-off process. I die and then I'm going, let me scroll up. Okay, I want Mr. and Mrs. this, right? So we don't do this. We're choosing based on the collective and day-to-day investments of our decisions we're putting into the field. And based on that, you get a correlative environment. So there's no unfairness in this universe. Everyone, believe it or not, I know this is where a lot of people will get a little bit uncomfortable, because instantly next thing they're going to say is, what about those who die prematurely, or those who have cancer, or those who go through great amount of pain? Instantly, every time it arises. Again, there is no disconnect or discord in this universe anywhere. There is an unseen reason or cause because of which this product, or whatever you want to call it, a person, a place, an environment, is what it is. Suppose you and I live in the future, okay? And we fly back to Earth and we say, this is a barren desert. What happened? And someone says, well, you see, there were human beings living here and they deforested at an accelerated pace. They put out reports how there's no carbon emission damage to the environment. They disregarded nature's call to make a change. And this is what nature has simply given them back: an uninhabitable place. There is always an unseen cause because of which a thing is what it is. A place is what it is. A person is what it is. That unseen cause is Adrishtapala. You don't see. You don't see. I don't see, because the network is so complex and large that it's beyond our minds. We cannot trace it, let alone for somebody else. You can't even trace it for yourself, let alone for somebody else. So that is not our concern. See, Vedanta's concern is not to create a million different connections and figure out how the universe works. That's not what Vedanta is. You're not figuring out the universe. You're recognizing you are free of the universe. The universe is you, but you are not the universe. But it's not a call for laziness. It's a call for clarity. Now you're not so burdened to fill me up. Me. Make me happy. You are free to contribute and be a lot more priority driven. What is priority? Priority basically means this is not for me, not right now, not in this way. That's priority. Not for me, not right now, not in this way. That means you're a lot more focused to do what is to be done according to the needs of the environment and not according to your own little needs that are really not even yours. So it's a huge shift that happens in terms of how you conduct yourself.
Thanks for that visual representation of what we're actually really seeking. So then, are we saying that everything that we seek in life, whether it's material success, a relationship, I don't know, being recognized, whatever, that is all a mask? We think that that's what we're seeking, but actually what is really being sought is connection to whole. But because we don't recognize that, we try and satiate that searching by putting it in other things, like, oh, actually, I want to be famous, or I want to be an artist, or whatever. But then because we're in this material plane, it's natural that we're going to have these desires because of some level of ignorance, even if cognitively, intellectually, we're having these conversations and we know that actually we are already whole, but we're still driven by the gunas or whatever. Then is it not possible to use these things that we seek, like in the example you gave, like a relationship, to actually reach or be in that higher goal? Is it not possible to have a relationship that isn't about, you know, distraction or like feeling pleasure for a short while, and have it so that it's two people together because it helps each other reach that truth?
You're right to observe that ultimately you can prove that no one's really looking for a relationship, because what I really want is my fullness. A relationship is just a means to that fullness. So you're not looking for a relationship, you're looking for your fullness. You're not looking for even kids. You're not looking for kids. You're looking for what kids will give you. They will give you that connection to yourself, that safety and security. So that safety and security you already are now. So this is a hard thing to understand, but it's crucial. Otherwise, you just keep on holding on to this relative knower forever, and kind of supporting their decisions. But you have to just understand that the relative knower, called your name, is coming with many preferences, and those preferences have a means of accomplishing things. Some of us have ways to do it on our own. Some of us, we prosper by the companionship of another person. Some of us, to accomplish that goal of moksha, some of us can do that by contributing. So whatever is your calling, see, a guru never tells you you should do this. Guru simply lets you know what is your inclination by which you can shine in this world. If that inclination is to be with a relationship, which to your priorities, this is for me, yes, in this way and right now. If that is your priority and other things are not for me, not in this way, not right now, so that means through that assessment, you create a life that is meaningful for you. And that life follows the values that are hopefully keeping with a higher cause, which is moksha. So yes, originally in the Vedic scriptures, marriage was for one reason only, and there's actually kind of a little bit of a debate, but the highest purpose is for the sake of helping you get through this journey. The second, this is a little bit older, it's not applicable today, it is the wife used to facilitate the yajnas of the husband. You couldn't do a yajna without the help of a wife. So that's a different kind of reason, but ultimately it is to help you get through this journey. So a relationship is possible if both are clear and those values are being accounted for, and they're holding each other accountable, because otherwise they can kind of a little bit sidetracked. So that can also happen. So there's no rules to this, but if there's one guiding principle, it is your freedom. That's the ultimate purpose. That's the only real purpose why you're born. That's it. There's no all this web and AI and anything you've ever been fascinated. This is just incidental. This is just a creation of minds to try to feel that wholeness. Oh, we are now in touch with the all-knowing intelligence called AI. So that gives us a sense that removes our inadequacy of not knowing. Look what we have accomplished. All of these things, let them not be distractions for you. They are to be used wisely, no different than a relationship. So essentially, there's no difference between AI and a relationship, because both of them are just a means to an end. They're never the end of itself. They're a means to an end. What is the end? The end is your freedom. We call this, by the way, enlightened self-interest. It is self-interest because you are invested in your growth, in your liberation. But in so doing, you're also very clear and ensuring that the other person is on the same journey. That's called enlightened self-interest. And so, yes, it's important to keep that goal in mind, because the mind tends to divert itself based on something that happens within an environment at work, and then you can kind of go in a little tangent. And then every single time you need to get yourself back. And this is not a practice done one-off perfectly. It is a consistent practice done imperfectly for the rest of your life.
So to summarize, if you keep that truth at the front of your mind all the time, then everything you do or anything you do is okay, in quotation marks, because it's fueled by the ultimate.
There is no right or wrong unless it starts to become an obstruction or it's kind of a kind of divertue. So we don't even look at it as right or wrong. You just have to be very clear what is it that you want. And the scriptures are there to help the individual already. If they're not clear themselves, the scriptures explicitly say nothing's wrong here, nothing's right either. It is what you choose to make your life. But we will tell you, you cannot cheat the program. And until you attain that which is the highest, no amount of relationships or AI is ever going to give you that permanent contentment, relaxation, that there is nothing else to do here. Nothing for billions of years of work and actions is not going to give you that. That's why this is a journey of, and it's an enlightened self-interest. It's a self-interest where you are interested in your well-being. And through that interest, people are there to help you, and you're there to help other people. So yes, the summary was spot on. Okay, so once we discover your nature, then you are at once free of this whole cycle of receiving more punyam and papam into your life in the form of sukham and dukkham, because you have no connection to this person. You don't come reborn as one more individual who is going to have a body with a mind and a thought system. And once liberation takes place, you can't go back. Why? You cannot forget this knowledge, because liberation is not a memorized fact, like memorizing a certain distance between the moon and the sun. You can forget that. You'll forget that within a month. But you cannot forget that you exist. It's not a matter of remembering. You don't need to remember that you exist. You just know it. You also cannot go back because your existence and your awareness is never out of sight. For example, can you say, while looking at your hand, you say, I forgot my hand. I forgot my hand. Can you do that? While looking at your hand, I forgot my hand. I forgot. You can't do that because it's there. It's all the time. It's just so available to you. Therefore, once you come to know your nature, because it's the closest, most evident, most obvious principle, it's not possible to ever go back. The third reason is because the knowledge sublates the ignorance, or ignorance is removed by knowledge. For instance, if we go last week to that snake and rope example, you are walking at perhaps a darker place and there's no enough sunlight to point out the full visibility of the rope. Owing to obstructing variables called your not knowing the full nature of the rope, you create something other than what it is. You create it to look like a snake. And so by doing this, your mind then responds appropriately with fear and an apprehension to deal with it. Now, when you finally come to shine the light that's equated to the knowledge on that rope, you fully see that which was always seen. You never really saw a snake. You were always looking at a rope. So when you bring a variable called self-knowledge and you shine it on your mind and you fully illumine that which is already present in your mind, which is the absolute knower, the aluptadrik, then what happens? You never again can see that rope as a snake. Unless some prankster says, oh, okay, you think you're smart enough. Let me break your example. Tomorrow, we're going to go together in a little park, and I'm going to go a little bit ahead of you, and I'm going to put snake scales on that rope, and I'm going to really make it look like a snake. And so they put that rope with snake scales in front, waiting for you to cross the path in a place where there's insufficient light, and then this time you really see, or think you do, a snake. And then once again, you are fearful. Now, I said this example intentionally because this example breaks. What happened to the rope? The rope changed, didn't it? Yesterday, you saw just a rope. Today, the rope changed. Therefore, if the rope changes, you can kind of commit the same error. But does awareness ever change? No. which is why once you recognize your true nature as that which never wavers, which is ever evident, ever present, as the illumining principle of all the relative knowers, consciousness, because consciousness never changes, once it's known fully for what it always was and is right now and never will be other than what it is, it cannot ever be mistaken for something else. Therefore, these three reasons are why once knowledge takes place, even if amnesia comes, you cannot, quote, forget it. The body mind will be in pain during dementia and amnesia, and people may not even, you may even be rude towards people because the brain does start to degrade. But even that person, once their body drops finally, they do not come back as another human being. Therefore, this knowledge becomes very, if next to impossible, to assimilate once dementia already kicks in, because then the mind is not sharp, it's not concerned about existence. That mind with dementia basically goes to the level of a child. It starts to look for sense pleasures, for a quick escape, for quick and easy, expedient. It's not interested in thoughtfulness and depth. It just wants to get rid of that relative pain at the time of experiencing it. So it's not necessarily true that you wait from brahmacharya to grihasta and then you go, it's okay, let me just live out my full life, and then when I go to vanaprastha, when I'm 60 plus, then I'll begin this journey. Most people, when they're 60 plus, they're exhausted. All you want is a break. But by then, you realize I'm not even interested in this existentialism because my life is kind of already working out. You know, kids are gone out, wife is there, it's all goody-goody. So it gives you another illusion that you are as though accomplished and free. But that is going to lead you to another birth. So therefore, the best way to work this knowledge is while your mind is capable, then expose it to this knowledge as much as you can while attending your household duties. That is a proper approach. There is no rigidity to this. First this and then that. This doesn't work. It's unrealistic. It is while amidst being tribulations and perturbations and annoyances and all of the goodnesses of life, amidst that, you find a time to bring this knowledge and incorporate it throughout your experiences. That is the right approach. Okay, so
I was just thinking, Andre, because it's Atma is the truth of the past, present, and future. Therefore, it's not bound by any time, so it's always present. So if you understand this with clarity at a certain point in your life, even if the mind degrades and starts, you know, not recognizing anything, at that point you've understood this. So that's the truth in that point. So you could get dementia or whatever afterwards, and that point, you're not defined by a point. So past, present, future, it's present in all three states.
Indeed, indeed. You have reconnected to that which is not affected what happened
By time.
time. Therefore, you're at once free from the degrading body affected by time. Therefore, let's get on with this. Let's get on with this journey, okay? It's time, seriously. It's time. You got to say this is it. This is it. One life, you got to say, this is it. And I'm here to reinforce that motivation, that this is it. There's no next life. This is it. Even if there might be a next life, you just say, this is as though the last life. And it gives you so much commitment and priority to move on. And verse 19 then says, for that wise person, the results that are about to happen to them, the punya papam, the consequences, they are burnt or they are disowned by knowledge. Verse 19, yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnana agni dagdha karmanam tamahuf panditam buddhaha.
The one for whom all undertakings are free from binding, desire, and will, whose actions are burnt by the fire of knowledge. The sages call him as wise.
So let's look at the first line. The wise persons we are speaking of, his or her, so the jnanis or the jnaninis, undertakings are free of, or actions are free of, desire and will. Now, this is going to be confusing because you think that they have no desire and they have no reason to live, right? So how does an ordinary person who is still going through this journey and sincere in so doing, how do they go by making a decision? They go, according to the verse, by two principles. The first one is kama. Kama is desire. So, of course, it can be a desire for duty. You have to do what you've got to do with your family and work and so on. But the second is to fill your needs. Most people pursue desire to fill unmet needs. There's an unmet need that I have, that I want to be seen or heard or validated. I want attention. I want to be someone. I want to be accomplished. So it becomes a very much a motivating factor by which then I commit. I put my intention, my sankalpa. Therefore, the second is sankalpa. So how do I make a decision as an ordinary person? First, by desire, kama, to fill my unmet needs. So that means essentially everyone in the world that you ever meet has a desire. And then you say, why do you have a desire? And they will tell you a million different reasons. But ultimately, for whose sake is that desire being fulfilled? It's going to be a first person, for my sake. See, everyone's going to say that for my, of course, you're not doing a desire for someone else. And even if you are, for whose sake are you doing for somebody else? You're doing it for my sake, because it gives you pleasure to help to make a dinner for somebody else. It gives you a certain contentment. Thereby, an ordinary person, now having this unmet need to please me, puts a will, a sankalpa, an intention, or a determination to make that happen. Therefore, what are the two driving forces of a ajnani, a non-wise person? It is desire followed by sankalpa, a determination. I have a desire, and now I am determined to bring that desire into my experience. And thereby, what is thus the center of that experience, of that whole phenomena? Who's the center of that? I am. It's always I. I put desire for my well-being. I put determination. There's determination for whose sake? For my well-being. Why? Because I want to be whole and complete. I want to reclaim my nature through a different action. So this person who does such, they have something to gain or lose, because they have they're invested in their fullness. So I don't want to lose fullness that I already have, a little bit of fullness that I have. I want to gain more fullness. Therefore, they have always something to gain and lose. So this is something about the human behavior. Everyone you will ever meet, what's one commonality? What's the affirmation in the mind? I have something to gain and lose. Universal. Now, what about a wise person? Well, it says that they are free from these two, from desire and commitment or determination. Now, what do we say? Who's free? Well, awareness is free. Is the body-mind free? No, because the body-mind is made to continue having desires and certain kind of, investment in self-preservation. Therefore, there's no entity for the wise person who stands to gain or lose something, because that entity was never real in the first place. So now that there is no entity to gain or lose anything, to what does a wise person's body and mind become useful for? It becomes useful for what it was always made for: contributing, giving, sharing. That is the natural, healthy state of a body-mind. The reason why you don't see that today is not because the body-mind has lost contact with that natural program. It's because of our likes and dislikes. And they say, no, 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 no. I don't have to help you because my time is very precious. I have something to lose by helping you. I am giving my time to you. Therefore, it short circuits this natural program of giving without any sort of expectation back. So therefore, the wise person, having disowned this identity crisis, which I have something to gain or lose, they understand that that which performs in this world is an instrument which was never me, which I was never to begin with. And that makes you so much, that instrument, clear and more available to do what has to be done without the pressures anymore, without that personal me, what's in it for me, why should I? None of that is there anymore because the mind continues to function as always, the body continues to function as always, but what is one difference? It's not mine. You see that difference? It's a huge shift. Before, the body-mind was mine. Okay? It's me. Now, it is mine, but it's not really me. Right? It's given to me for a while, but it's not really me. And thereby, the person is now so much more available to do, not because they want to be someone or to be recognized. They do because they are needed. They don't get a family anymore because I want to have kids to fill my life up, to give me a higher calling, a higher duty. Why? Because it's a natural expression of one's unfinished business. If you want a family, go and have a family. The money is no longer made for the sake of validation. It's made because it's just a necessary part of life. Okay? Therefore, the jnani can act without this need that I have to please myself, but rather let me give of myself to you, because that is the very healthy expression of every human being. You may right now think, yeah, that's all, that's all new age stuff. That's all, what, yeah, other people don't give to me. You know why that's the case? Because you need to go first. Whether others give to me first or not is none of my business. I don't wait for others to give first. I give because that is the natural harmonious state of affairs. Whether you want to give back is none of my business. As long as you're receiving and benefiting and it's aligned with my values, I will give. If you no longer want to listen, well, somebody else will continue giving to you. But I tell you this, every human being shifts from the mode of take, take, take into being a natural giver. And that is a huge shift in your spiritual journey. Taker to giver. Me to what can I offer? How can I help? Without denying your own needs, by the way. I'm not saying now be a doormat. I'm saying that keeping with your values, with self-honor, self-respect, in so doing, I'm available to give you. And thereby, for that person, because they have, created this healthy mindset of being a giver, of relinquishing this person who's always got something to gain or lose, what happens? Their karma is burned by the fire of knowledge. It says actions, but it's more like their karma pala, their consequences. The consequences which are yet to be experienced, they are disowned. A better word here than burnt is disowned. They are disowned by knowledge. The knowledge that I am free of the person, of the waking knower and the dream knower. And what does this mean? Well, let's explain. See, every person, like I said, filling those blanks. I live in, filling the blanks. I like, filling the blanks. I don't like, filling the blanks. Every one of those filling the blanks, I said the question at the beginning of the session, what makes it different? why are your blanks different from mine? And the reason is because you and I have what's called an account, for lack of a better word. Just call it an account, like a bank account. Now, this bank account is what gives you a life that you have, because you can only take from the bank the kind of money that you have earned, right? Naturally. So if you've earned black money, if you withdraw from the ATM, from your bank account, you can only withdraw black money. If you've earned white money or good money, then you can only withdraw, right, good money. If you earn both black money and good money, then your withdrawal is always going to be a mixture of both. And then you have to kind of make the best of it to separate, because your mixture was created 50 years ago, and now when you become a much more wiser person, when you withdraw the money, are you suddenly going to get all good money just because you're a good person? No, you are going to withdraw a mixture of black and good money, which was invested by this doer 30, 50 years ago. Therefore, you now have to deal with the kind of money that is being withdrawn. Now, so we call this your account. And what kind of account it is? Suppose there are 3 accounts. The first account, which makes your life what it is right now, which the wise person is free of, is called your Sanchita karma. So Sanchita, think of it like this, and I'll explain it in a different way, except the way that you probably heard before 10,000 times. Think of your Sanchita as a balance sheet. So on the left side, you've got wise actions, and we call this dharmic actions or punya actions. And on your right side, you've got unwise actions. This is called adharmic actions or papam actions. And it's called your balance sheet with your name on top. Now, these actions, or should we call them tendencies? So wise, that means tendencies that are unwise, created by unwise actions, and tendencies that are wise, created by wise actions. Okay, so all of us have wise tendencies, such as take care of yourself, be discerning, have self-honor, and so on, and unwise tendencies, such as judge and call others losers and so on, right? So all of these are there, let's face it. So we all have them at some level or the other. And they're tendencies. So that means those tendencies are going to fructify at the level of your behavior. Okay, so now these tendencies are called your samskaras. Okay, now these wise tendencies, when they fructify at the level of your behavior, they will create what's called conducive circumstances, conducive conditions. And those conducive conditions, because you are kind, you are generous, and people like that, those conducive conditions will produce sukham in your life, happiness. Whereas the unwise tendencies in your balance sheet, when they get expressed through your word, through your action, and through your thought, they will produce what's called friction, or a certain kind of discomfort in your experience, dukkam. Therefore, wise produces sukham, and unwise tendencies produce dukkam, friction. So that is your total bank account. Now, when you get born, what happens is, for the first time ever, you are creating new tendencies, new impressions, new behaviors that are not in either the wise or the unwise. For the first time ever, suppose you get into you meet a certain friend, and that friend is into a little bit of spirituality. And for the first time ever, you start to talk about spirituality. What is this? What is that, right? You start to ask questions. And as you get more involved, you're building more familiarity with spirituality. And so you're creating a tendency on your left side, on your wise tendency side, called spiritual impression. And that spiritual impression for the first time ever is being created. And so it gets added where? In your total balance sheet called your Sanchita karma. Now, suppose you die. Don't worry about it. What's still in the balance sheet? Spiritual tendencies. Okay. So now suppose you die. What happens is the new life a small section of that balance sheet, a little bit of spiritual tendencies get taken over. You are a loser, gets taken over, and all these tendencies get put into one account called prarabdha, and those tendencies will make you the person that you are. For instance, now that you have learned spiritual tendencies in the last life, what's going to happen is when a body is born, you will innocently be attracted to spirituality, and you won't be able to explain why. You will just be the weirdo kid who's into spirituality while everyone else is in sports. And you will be bullied, of course, but don't worry, as you come out of school, you will find that this has served you well. Why? Because of the tendency which you have developed in the previous life, which has now helped you to connect in this life to a much higher teaching. Therefore, your prarabdha karma forces you to exhaust your tendencies. And because it forces you, you innocently get involved in the right kind of environment with other spiritual goofy people, and you start to learn more vocabulary, more inquiry, and slowly, your entire journey takes a whole different course. All because of a tendency that you have added to your balance sheet in a previous life on the left side, called the dharmic actions or punyam. So therefore, can you see now how the three are connected? Why you are the way that you are, how life of tendencies gets carried over and it gets taken to the next life and you start to live that. This is why we say you cannot help but to be who you are as a person, because you have to exhaust those tendencies. They are assigned to you for one life. Because spirituality is assigned to you for one life, you are going to just, even if someone drags you over into race cars, you're going to come back into spirituality. You can't help it. And thereby, being given the spirituality, make use of it, because it may not last forever. Next life, you may be back into race cars. You've lost your chance.
I think that, as long as I can keep my concentration and, be watching constantly where my mind goes, at all times, I can keep that on there. Okay, stay in that left column, do those dharmic actions and don't do these other things, these selfish activities. But what always seems to get in the way, it's the roadblock every time, is this whole thing with likes and dislikes. He just gets there, boom, anytime you let your mind wander for 1 second, there you are. I was just wondering if you could address how to just end those roadblocks.
Sure. So Carrie is speaking of amidst your attempts to make your life, of course, delightful and remove those obstructing variables. In so doing, you are continuing to get more obstructing variables. And this is everyone's experience. So we have to first acknowledge you're not the only one. None of us are alone in this journey. So, exactly. So this means that, see, your variables that are obstructing are very different than my variables or somebody else's variables. But what we do have is, while we cannot control what variables or friction arises, what you can do is say, now having this arose, what is in my power to do about this? How can I kind of mitigate the friction that is prevalent in this moment? And so you do whatever has to be done to remove those obstructing variables by asking for some help, by kind of reframing the situation. And so again, going back to my previous statement, and this attempt is never done perfectly. It is a continuous effort done imperfectly. You will never do one attempt and you say, I have now solved all my problems. Even when you do something that is supposedly very well put through, even then you will feel like I could be doing better. Is this your experience? You feel like, hey, there's a better action. Maybe I've missed something. That is everyone's experience. This is why I say you will never do an action perfectly. The journey is about doing whatever you can imperfectly. And that imperfect will go on to the rest of one's life. That's the right way to go about this, because you cannot have perfection in a world where you never have the total information on what has to be done. You never have the full facts. So you can only do what you can do according to the very little information that you've got. That's why it's done imperfectly. But you've got to do it, because if you let it slide, then it's just going to collate and more burden, and it's going to become heavier to the point where you don't even have motivation to address it anymore. So thereby, the best time to address it is the moment it starts to show up. Do whatever you can to mitigate that friction. Is it ever going to be a perfect action? Never. Is it necessary? Yes.
So, well, you wouldn't say that likes and dislikes are necessarily the thing to worry about.
If they kind of create more friction, so if I don't like confrontation and I do get confronted, and because I don't like it, now I lash out upon you, and that creates more distance between us, in that case, I've got something to work with. But if I have a dislike, for example, for spiders, does that have any bearing on anyone? No, spider dislike is not a big issue. So likes and dislikes are okay. Everyone's got likes and dislikes. Okay, you actually, as human being, has likes and dislikes. So it's not a question of getting rid of them. It's just about redirecting them. Priority. Right now, this is not for me. Not in this way, not right now. Other things, this is for me. Yes, in this way, right now. So just about redirecting your likes and dislikes to be more aligned with your values that you honor, that are important for you.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I feel like a
I'll
big
think
part
about
of
that.
that is even noticing it,
Yeah, acknowledging. Acknowledging is the first step.
acknowledging it.
It's admitting
Yeah.
it's there. It's there. It's there happening to me. This is honesty. And that's actually half the battle then.
I think that it's a lifelong challenge, because frustration arises when your physical capacity, you cannot meet those desires. And that will only increase in time due to my experience of being around older people. So even the simple things like going from A to B becomes a challenge, and therefore frustration creeps in, and you'll see yourself acting differently to what you used to act. So I think those desires are not met, and due to physicality deteriorating, and that's why I think it lasts till the last breath, because you'll see yourself not able to meet those desires, because everything's changing, and entropy, like it's just natural.
Yeah.
So the challenge is continuous.
The challenge is continuous. And this is a very good message for all of us, that if there's no greater fallback, and it's really just on your health and all those things that are really deteriorating, if there's no greater fallback in Ishvara or something that's meaningful, then when these situations do come, then it's much harder to deal with them. So there needs to be a greater fallback in life than just your well-built and your healthy beauty and your body. There has to be there, because situations will arise that will make your body irrelevant, that will make your thoughts irrelevant. So what is that greater fallback in life that you can always lean on? And it's there to help you to, of course, as a wise person, that greater fallback will be discussed next week, which is not a separate thing. It is you. You are that which is the ultimate, the security. You find security in your mere existence alone, while letting your body do what has to be done. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.